On today's episode, we got Tony Gill in the building, and me and Tony Gill are going to be talking about everything about the Chicago Bulls, from the players to the coaching staff to the ownership to even the front office. We're going to break it all down right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
I'm very excited for this guest to welcome to the show. We have Tony Gill from the Bulls Talk podcast. And I wish I could list everything that you've done. You've done a lot there, brother.
Yeah. Like, I don't think about it, but yeah. I've done some stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, when you first came on the Bulls Talk podcast, like, what was just like that whole process of that coming together like for you?
So I think my first instance on the Bulls Talk podcast, I was a guest. I was still working at 670 The Score as executive producer for Lawrence Holmes. So, I just enjoyed talking ball, man. Like, I played it my whole life. Been a fan my whole life. Grew up with it in my life. So, talking about the Bulls as, my favorite team, at the time as a fan was, just a joy. So, first I joined as a guest. I think Layla Rahimi, Kevin Bulldog Anderson, for all you guys in the know of on Bulls Twitter, Kevin Anderson. He's a great follow, so make sure you follow him. And I just talked Bulls basketball. And, a couple months later, they were looking for a podcast producer, and, they hired me. So the Bulls Talk podcast has taken, a lot of iterations since I've been there. Now, like Rob Schaefer, he used to be on. He's no longer on. Shout out to Rob. Make sure you go read his stuff on NBA Bulls basketball. So now it's me, KC, Jason Goff, and we're having a good time just talking about the Bulls and just getting that, reacting to KC's inside information and what he's got going on. So it's always a good time.
I love listening to Casey Johnson too, because he so casually just drops like, I was talking to somebody, they said this, like, hey Casey, I'm jealous just a little bit.
Yeah, he does it all the time too. It's like, I'm cool with everybody on the beat, right? I love Darnell Mayberry. Darnell came to my wedding, so I love Darnell. But when Darnell had the little tidbit of Arturas getting the quiet extension, the secret extension, Casey was like, like I had that, but like a few months ago. So Casey, he'll casually drop gems in there, but you got to catch up with him. You got to catch up where he's at. So.
That's a fact. Now, it's been a struggle being a Bulls fan to a degree. I think outside of the little glimpse that we had for the first 30 games last season, it's been so up and down. What's been, like, when you see everything that the Bulls have gone through in the last couple of seasons, like, what's the one thing to you that gives you kind of hope on this version of the team, if you even have any still hope for this version of the team?
I guess the small ounce of hope that I have is that Arturas and Mark see what we all see. With the ceiling of this roster and allowing not that 30-plus game sample of healthy Lonzo, healthy everybody else, kind of control what they see with this team and take the rest and the remaining. And it's not all, it does have a lot to do with on the court, but that just isn't the only thing. It's the blow-ups, right, in the locker room. It's the thinking that you're going to use Goran Dragic and he's going to be a team player and you end up cutting him in the same year. Like, there's things going on this roster that the pieces aren't blending together and aren't gelling together at a consistent and enough basis. That is an issue. So the slight bit of hope is that they're going to this offseason thinking that this can't be the way that we proceed. Now, it's probably the most likely situation is everybody comes back. But the slightest shred of hope I have is they see what we all see when we watch this team every night.
Yeah, and it's some flashes of things, and you see this team operating in some games, and you're just like, why can't they do this every night? And then, like, you quickly remind, like, we weren't able to get a 4-game winning streak at all this season, and every time we thought we were going to, we went on like a 2-game losing streak, 3-game losing streak. So I have faith in Arturas, and I know a lot of Bulls fans have started like almost saying they're as bad as Gar Pax, and I have my thoughts on that and stuff, but I really feel like they've been in the job for 3 years. Like, you got to take time. I do think everything they've done hasn't hit, of course, but no GM is going to hit on everything they do. But it's really going to take time to try to salvage this. And then when you look at, on top of that, Lonzo, the whole Lonzo situation really did change the trajectory of the Bulls a lot.
Yeah. I mean, they're based on the sample that we got, their plan was working. Yeah. Now, it fully healthy, I thought that group still had a ceiling, but at least you were playing meaningful basketball. You had a style of play. You had all the things to build up a culture that would, for larger free agents, right, for larger talents, you could be like, hey, we're doing something here. We're building something here. The Bulls are relevant. That's cool. But everything isn't supposed to break down with technically your fourth best player.
That's a fact.
Like, everything can't go down the drain, and you missed the playoffs 2 years out of the 3 because one player.
Yeah.
That is a tough pill to swallow, and that's a tough thing to sell to Bulls fans, right? Like, they came in on the introductory, right, with the, hey, we're built through the draft, we are development guys, and I was all here for it, because at the end of guard packs, they were just trying to find random pieces to put together to make a reputable roster, and it didn't work. So it was refreshing to hear Arturas say, we're going to build this thing with a solid foundation on the ground up, and halfway through the season, flip the roster.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they got really aggressive. It's like, fam, what happened? You just said you were gonna build it up. Well, I mean, okay, like, it's your job, do what you want to do. But I was on board with the look, this isn't a free agent town.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's ever gonna be. Like, we've had the examples of them trying to do that, because people think that Chicago, because it's the third largest city, it should automatically be a free agent city.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful city. We love the city. It's a great city. It's a great summer city. But people that aren't used to the winters here, like, it's different.
Yeah.
It's different. So, like, it's just not a great free agent town. So when you look at where those guys were coming from, or Philly and with Mark Eversley and Denver, I mean, look at Denver now. They built that thing from the ground up.
Yeah.
It's okay to build stuff from the ground up. And so that's just kind of my thing with how they're going about this, because now they're stuck.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're stuck now. They backed themselves into a corner, and they may need to take a couple steps back, right, from the maze, reverse a couple steps in order so you won't hit that same roadblock.
And for sure. And I think that, sometimes you have to take a step back to step forward. And I think that's where we're currently at. And it sucks that we're there really 2 full years after this version of the roster has been together, but you got to be able to adjust. And one thing that AK has shown, if you do look at Denver, is that he always constantly adjusted, but he did have a solid groundwork of, like, drafting and building and developing players. And that is one of the things that Bulls fans will talk about. P. Will all day long. Should he have been a 4th overall pick? Shouldn't he have been? But when you look at how the Bulls have drafted, do you think we've drafted between Ayo, Kobe, which Kobe was still before Arturas, but Ayo, Kobe, Marco, Dalen, do you think that they've done a good enough job drafting, or is it just that those players haven't got the chance to develop because we immediately went from being a team that said we were going to build from the ground up to a team that was trying to contend?
When you do the pros and cons, and hopefully when they did the pros and cons of how they were going about this, once they, made the trade for Vooch, that, okay, we're going to start the winning window now, that you take into account what you're going to be losing.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of your organization. And what you lost was added development for your top 4 pick. That now he doesn't get the opportunity to make offensive mistakes because you're trying to play meaningful games now. When you look at, hey, you're trying to build around Zach, he is in the prime of his career. He's ready to go now. But the roster wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And you trying to flip a roster to make it ready doesn't feel natural, and it doesn't feel I always look at, okay, who's doing it right, and are we on that same trajectory? You look at the last 4 teams. The Lakers are a special case. They have one of the all-time great players, LeBron James, and a future Hall of Famer, Anthony Davis. That is a different scenario. But you look at the rest: Miami, the Celtics, and the Nuggets, they all started from the ground up trying to find their guy or their guys, which they drafted. So you skipped all of that to be relevant now.
Yeah.
And when you look at how those teams are playing, the real teams that have Miami and Denver in particular, how do you think you're close to that? Like, with those pieces, do you think you're close to that? And if they're honest with themselves, no. And that comes at the sacrifice of their drafted players.
Yeah.
Dalen Terry, statistically, was the least played player at his draft position in the history of the NBA.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? Like, if you can't, it's very, very difficult to do two things at once.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. I don't know why they're trying to reset how we all know how championship teams are built.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't do it this way. They don't have your best player for most of this, right, was DeMar DeRozan. What has DeMar done on a real winning basis? He hasn't done anything. And you want to build around that.
Yeah.
Like, that's weird. Like, we know how this goes. We know how championship teams are built. There's a formula. There's a pattern. The Bulls are trying to do something just that I haven't seen. Hopefully it works out. Because, I'm right there with it. I hope for the success for this team. But how they're going about trying to build a championship in a stable championship situation is just something that we haven't seen before.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's you feel it. Like, you feel it on the roster. Like, the roster's so imbalanced, and at times you just feel that. And another thing, like, you look at the teams that you mentioned around, and one thing that I take from it, like, you look at a player like Jimmy, who we did have here. Unfortunately, we don't anymore. And it's like, we don't have leadership. That's one of the biggest things missing from this team is we don't have that edge. We don't have that leadership. And I love Zach LaVine, and I'm not an anti-maxer. I'm glad Zach got his money. I want to see Zach on this team. But Zach isn't that verbal rah-rah leader on the court, and we don't have that. We had it briefly with Pat Bev, and I think that shows how concerning that is, that you had to go out and find your leadership in the buyout market. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have guys that set the standard for everybody through practice and in games to challenge everybody to step up their level of play, a lot of people are scared of that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, because that now breathes through the rest of the organization. Am I doing the best that I can do for us to win games? Jimmy challenges that. And I get it. He is a difficult person at times, that he grinds on people. Yeah. Whoa, pause.
That's definitely a pause moment there, Tony.
But you get what I'm saying, though. Like, you don't necessarily have to be the vocal guy to set a standard, right? Mm-hmm. Like Tim Duncan.
That's a great point.
Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, that's a great point.
You don't see him but the way he plays, the way he practices, if guys look at you and say, I cannot let this guy down, that's how you know you have a real leader, either vocal or not. Guys don't want to let Tim Duncan down.
Yeah.
The way he plays, the way he practices, the way he accepts coaching when he's playing bad, dudes don't want to let those dudes down, vocal or not. So that's how you know when you have a real leader in a standard setter. And I don't think the Bulls have that. And like you said, like, it's a shame that you had to go into the buyout market to find it.
Yeah.
Like that, they don't think that's weird. Like, they don't think that's really weird to have on a contending or playoff contending roster.
Yeah.
It is a team without a guy to challenge and make sure even the stars, right? Even the stars. Hey, what are you doing? What do you? That's not what we're going over defensively. Yeah. Like, what's up? What's that? What was that offensive play? Like, if you have that type of environment, that leads to winning situations, no matter who's on the roster. Yeah. And we see that example in Miami.
That's a fact. That's a fact. It's been really a revelation. I'm happy for Jimmy too. Like, hopefully they close it out tonight. We're just dating when we're recording this, but yeah, hopefully they close it out tonight. When you look, also, I want to ask you about the coaching. A lot's been made about Billy Donovan, secret extension. He's going to be here. I've said before, expect Billy Donovan to be here at least another 5 years. Is probably more than likely what's going to be locked in here. How do you feel about the job Billy's done, coaching, done development wise? Like, what's your pulse on Billy Donovan?
Billy Donovan is a really smart basketball coach.
Okay.
He understands the game at an elite level. I have no issues. You can tell by the way that he exhausted all of his options that he had on the roster. Starting wise, rotation wise, he used what he had for the most part, technically, to try and get the best out of this group. His fatal flaw, in my opinion, which is why I found it curious that Arturas literally dropped everything to go after him, was in the best set of circumstances that he had, right, with Westbrook and Durant. They came up short. There wasn't a style of play, and Kevin Durant left that situation. Like, under his best circumstances with 2 Hall of Fame players like of that echelon, he didn't figure out what was the best way to use them, and Kevin Durant left that situation. So you come here and you know how modern basketball is played. His fatal flaw is that his style of coaching and his style of play is dictated by who his best players are, even to the detriment to the rest of the team. And you read about his coaching style, what happens. He tried to bench Zach one time in Orlando, and that did not go well at all. And Zach held that against him. But if he was able to explain that to Zach, like, hey, you were playing awful that game. Like, your decision-making, your defense, and you weren't making shots, which is a rarity. Zach usually makes shots. But that game, his inability to not be able to hone in and get everybody's attention for consistent effort, that's on him too. It's not just, this problem is multi-layered. It is managerial, coaching, and players. But since we're talking about Billy specifically, if you notice that there's a distinct advantage that Vooch has in the paint and he doesn't touch the ball for a half, something's got to be done. Something's got to be done. If you are okay with that, you are part of the problem because you don't want to get into your star player's face. DeMar, pass him the ball. Zach, pass him the ball. If you don't pass him the ball, I'm taking you out this game. And eventually guys will get it. He's not trying to embarrass people. He's trying to win games. So my issue is he can't get his team to do what they're supposed to do on a consistent enough basis, because he knows, which is a overall rule, if I stick to the star players, I'm going to keep a job. As a Bulls fan, you don't want a coach trying to keep a job. You want him to be able to make the right moves, tough or not, to win games and to get and for the team to compete on a consistent enough basis. If you don't do that, you get what you got last year with inconsistent play all the time.
Listen, you're preaching right now. You're cooking, Tony, is all I can say on that one. Because you're absolutely right. It's so many times, and it was Vooch at times. It was Kobe, right? We saw times where Kobe was finally cooking, his shot was falling. He didn't get in the game. And it's like, that is your job as a coach to know how to balance those ebb and flows of the game. And, you know, again, I say, and Bulls fans get on me all the time where I'm like, Billy Donovan's not a horrible basketball coach. We got to start with that. He may not be the coach for this team, but he's not a horrible basketball coach by any stretch of the imagination. But he does a lot of questionable stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you think, and it's like, if we see it, we know you see it as a basketball coach. Why won't you say anything? And it's got to be because, like, look, it's tough to push those buttons. It is. And if you don't have the players necessary to help you be that coach that you need to be, if you don't have an assistant on that roster that can play the bad guy for you, like, you also have an understanding of yourself and your own personality, right? I'm not that much of a confrontational person. I know that about myself. My wife, she's ready to have it. We blend perfectly on that. So, like, it's just knowing your personality. And again, it goes back to management, feeding that upstairs, is knowing the personality of the people that you hire and the people that you sign. Like, you know, this roster, it is what it is. You know, you needed an actual leader to guide this. You didn't have it. And you own that coaching staff, right? Like, who's that guy? They're all nice people. I've talked to all of those players and all of those coaches. They're very nice people. But when push comes to shove, somebody needs to state the obvious. Somebody needs to get in some, put some foot in some butts. Just to get their attention. And I don't think they have that on this roster, coaching wise, or on the player side.
Yeah, and hopefully they find it. When we're heading into an uncertain free agency, don't have any draft picks. There's rumors of the Bulls trading into the draft, things like that. Right now, this is the point in time where the Bulls and most teams are going to be involved in every rumor for every possibility and permutation that could happen. When you get the feel for the team, we've talked about like more than likely they're probably going to run it back. That's the more than likely scenario. Mm-hmm. Do you how much hope do you have that we are going to see some significant changes? Not necessarily blowing it all up. I'm against that, but like, do you think that we see some of the necessary changes that we need to see? Not all of them, because it's unlikely all of them happen in one off season. But do you think we get some significant change this offseason?
Well, I think the first significant change is not really up to them because Vooch is a free agent.
Yeah.
If he decides to leave, what's your plan? Like, you have to maneuver at that point because he is such a significant piece to what they were trying to do there. So that's the first piece that is not completely up to them about what happens. Mm-hmm. The next piece is, what do you do with the pairing of DeMar and Zach LaVine? If you go into this offseason, you have these conversations with them along with Billy Donovan about what needs to change about this team, what needs to change about how they play. And literally, because they talked about it before the season started, about offense needs to be a bit more random. We got to take more threes. They said all that. It did not work out. And a lot of that has to do with, again, DeMar DeRozan being your best player, operating in that mid-range area, and you allowing that to dictate what you do on offense. So if you can't, by conversation and by strategy, be able to change the way you play with this roster or with this team and with these set of players, one of them has to go. DeMar's on the final year of his deal. He's going to be like, I am a 2-time All-Star with this team.
Yeah.
I need to be paid. I don't know why you would overpay for DeMar DeRozan. Like, if he's a part of your future, I don't know why. It didn't work this first go around for you as a whole. It worked for him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want Bulls fans too to forget the Bulls were his last resort.
And we overpaid. We overpaid. According to what the deals were out in the market, we completely overpaid for DeMar. Now he especially in the first season, he lived up to it, but we did overpay.
Yeah. I mean, like, don't forget, he didn't want to come here. Yeah. This was not where he wanted to go initially. So you had to overpay to get him to come here. So what is your plan? Like, what is your plan with this group? Do you, under Zach LaVine's 5-year deal, over the next 5 years, I'll ask you this. Do you think the Bulls are going to be championship contending within Zach LaVine's contract?
As much as I hate to admit this, I don't see a path. I see a path that we can be a tough out in the playoffs. Maybe we can get to the second round, but a championship contending team right now, unless a P. Will or Dalen Terry develops in a way that we haven't seen yet, I just don't see it, man.
And that's the tough outlook that I think the Bulls organization should have with themselves. We just gave Zach this big deal. Can we take advantage of it in the next 5 years? And from a Bulls fan standpoint, that admission is my team won't be championship contending for another 5 years. Yeah. I'm about to have a kid. My kid will be sentient and know what's going on television before the Bulls are actually contending. That should be
wild.
That is a wild look. And that's what when people watch this team, and I love watching the Bulls. I watched them my whole life, and I get it and I understand it. I want good things to happen for this team. But if you take a step back and look at what's going on, and you look at the contracts, and you look at the numbers, and you look at the rosters, who has been giving long-term extensions to, if you can't see them in that group under their contract winning or competing for a championship, that is a problem. That is a problem. So I guess that's a roundabout answer to discuss. I don't know if they believe that this isn't going to work. Their pairing of Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan.
Okay.
So that will be the final two, or the final situation to discuss amongst themselves over there is, do we do it now or we do it later? I prefer they do it now. because now it sets you on a trajectory of, okay, we got to move, we got to pivot. If we're going to stick with Zach LaVine, it's better to pivot now than it is to wait till after this DeMar contract is up. That's another wasted year on that Zach LaVine contract.
A fact. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hopefully they're willing to do it. I mean, and it concerns me when we hear things like, I know it's rumors and you got to get everything like, oh, well, there are some Bulls fans, Bulls execs that want to give DeMar extensions and things like that. It's like, come on. Like, you got to see the writing on the wall here, man. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any sense. Like, that would be one of the more head scratching things in a series of head scratching things that have happened for the Bulls lately, man. I just want to see my team win, bro. Like, that's really just what it boils down to, man. I hate to boil down to just being a fan for a second, but like, I'm 36 years old. I've been nothing but a Bulls. Like, literally, my dad born and raised on the south side of Chicago. There are pictures of me 9 months old sitting on my dad's lap watching Bulls games. I've been a Bulls fan my whole entire life. And it's just like, I just want to see my team win. Like, I came up during the Jordan era, and I got to see that. That's what my formative years. That's what I got to see and be a part of. I was 10 years old when Jordan won, I think, his last title, I believe, if I'm not off a little bit on the years there. But, like, it's just been a whole bunch of up and down. The closest we've been to was Derrick Rose. And then I saw that go away in the playoff series when he tore his ACL. It's been tough, man. It's been a tough lifetime.
Yeah, and for all Bulls fans, that should be the standard.
Yeah.
And I think you know how Bulls Twitter can get. You got your different sections of Bulls social media and Bulls fandom out there. And I think I get a lot of pushback for being like, negative on the Bulls, but I don't think I'm negative. I think I'm holding them to a standard.
Yeah.
A championship standard that they've already shown, right? With the Jordan years, right? Like, they all don't as an organization hark back to those years to like instill nostalgia to the fan base and re-emphasize that Red Bulls and that Chicago, and don't be expected to be held to that standard. Like, that's weird. Yeah. Like, don't invoke those emotions if you don't want to be held to that standard. Like, and it sucks to see how far that they've gone from that. And hopefully that they understand this is what the Bulls fan base is strong. It's strong. They became relevant for 2 years and everybody came back after we all acknowledged, like, we're not accepting this, right?
Yeah.
And I just hate to see the lowering of the standard from Bulls fans. No, keep it up there. Keep it high, right? Keep the standard high. Hold these executives, these players accountable, because you root for that team. You expect things from this team. This isn't, well, if they go out there and work hard, and I guess they don't even do that. they didn't even do that. That's even more frustrating. It's like, at least, if you're not going to win a championship, at least go out there and play hard every night. And that didn't even happen. And I was offended by a lot of games this year.
And that's what's so, like, because as Bulls fans, we respect a team that loses but fights and competes hard, right? Mm-hmm. Didn't even have that some games. Like you said, it's just, we are so far off. And like, I love that you said that, like, let's hold them to that standard. Like, we deserve to. Well, any other franchise that's won as many titles as the Bulls, that it came in a condensed amount of time. Their franchise has a standard, and even if they do come off that for a couple of years, it's all about getting back to that standard. Right now, we just trying to be relevant again, and that's weird.
if the bar is relevancy, that's a relatively low bar. Yeah. Any GM, any executive can make a trade for an overpriced, talented player and win some games. And get to a play-in. Like, relevancy shouldn't be the standard. Relevancy should be the baseline, right? That should be the base. The standard should be, with every move that we make, with every dribble of the basketball, with every right on the board, is this getting closer to winning a championship? Is this getting us closer to winning a championship? If you say yeah, then okay. But if you really think about it, are you making moves for relevancy's sake to get butts in seats, or are you actually making the moves necessary to win a championship? And that's what every fan should question about this team.
Hey, that's a quote. That's a bar there, Tony. That's what that is. That's a bar. Before we go, we talked a lot about this team. Got a little depressed there for a second, just thinking about how far we've come down. I've been trying to do this thing with every guest of asking, especially lifelong Bulls fans, their favorite memory or moment as a Bulls fan. So to end this on a positive note, what's your favorite memory as a Bulls fan?
I mean, I'm 30 years old. I'll be 31 in November. So my first basketball memory is of Jordan's last championship, or the last couple. I thought the Bulls were supposed to be there every year because, that was my introduction to Bulls basketball.
Yeah.
And then I forgot they had a team with the Ron Mercer years, and that was
oh man, listen. God.
So for my era of Bulls basketball, the absolute peak was the Rose years. And the Rose MVP year was the highest point, because you felt like this is real, this is sustainable.
Yeah.
This is going places. Other top tier talents are going to be attracted here now, even if this iteration doesn't work. People will see Derek, they will see Joe, they will see that we have all the necessary pieces to actually do something on a consistent basis. So the Rose MVP year, and side note, this is my secret thing. That was LeBron's MVP, low key. I'm not gonna fight it. I'm not gonna fight it. I'm happy Rose got it
to admit it, but we're happy you got it, right? We're happy you got it.
I'm happy you got it. But I mean, that time was the best time of my Bulls fandom. Was those years, because it felt real, and I know LeBron was at his highest peak at the same time. And it was definitely going to be an uphill climb trying to beat him and the Miami Heat and then Cleveland. But you felt like the Bulls had a shot.
Yeah.
And that's all you want. It's tough to win an NBA championship. We're greedy because the Bulls got 6 with MJ. But we understand it's really, really tough to get there. You just want to have a shot at it. And it felt like the Bulls had a shot with Rose. And it hasn't felt like that since. It hasn't felt like that since.
And it's I always go back and look, and Rose was actually a better basketball player the year after he won the MVP too. It was just like a refinement, and it just sucks that it all came crashing down after that.
Yeah. yeah. There was no reserve plan. There was no backup plan. It just kind of.
Well, we did have one. His name was Jimmy Butler, and Garpax said, "Hey, we don't know how to build around this guy. Let's trade him."
That's fair. That's fair.
Crazy, man. Well, Tony, thank you so much, man, for taking time out your schedule, man, to come and join me over here. Go ahead and give me your social media. Tell them where they can check you out at, brother.
Yes, sir. You can follow me on Twitter at Tony Gill. That's where all the fun happens. That's where all the conversation happens. Let's check out the Bulls Talk podcast for more takes from me and Casey Johnson and Jason Goff over at NBC Sports, and check out all of our other podcasts that we have there. We just introduced a Spanish language podcast. So for all my Spanish speakers out there, we have things for you as well. We have Hector Lozano, Telemundo sports anchor. He does some great and fantastic interviews with athletes from the city or about the sports that you care about. So we're very excited about that. We got you covered on the Blackhawks. Come on now. This is the time to get on the Blackhawks.
This is definitely time to get on the Blackhawks train.
Yeah, the Bulls are kind of not doing the rebuilding thing, but Blackhawks got a dude. They got a dude now, or going to draft a dude in Connor Bedard. So get on that train. We got all your conversation around that ready, set to go. But yeah, just follow me on Twitter, and that's where you find out all the stuff that I do.
There you go. Y'all make sure y'all go ahead and check him out. You guys know where you can follow me. You can follow me at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And then lastly, you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for our mailbag episodes, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. And we out, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.